What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. It's actually the same day I just wrapped up the last video, but we got some more time, and what I want to get done for the rest of the day is I want to get the roof wrapped black, and I want to get in between the windows wrapped black. That way when we get this thing tinted, it's a nice black look all the way around the cabin area. So the roof, these are pretty easy panels because they are nice and flat. The hardest part is just tucking the corners and, you know, making sure you're not going to see much red underneath, if at all. I like to have it perfectly tucked, so I kind of go the extra length, but we got some prep work to do for sure on this. Now I also want to get this area, which I think comes factory wrapped black, but because we painted the whole car, I did go ahead and unwrap that so we could do so. So we have to pull out our window grommets again, which means I probably have to jump the windows to roll them down so I can pull those out. But yeah, I want to get these wrapped and then the roof. And then obviously this area on the other side as well. I'm gonna start with the roof. First thing we gotta do is just prep it out, get it as clean as possible. So I normally take some soapy water, wash that up, and then I'll take some IPA and just, you know, run a layer of that over the top, clean it up with a microfiber, and then we should be good. The most important part is just making sure all your corners and edges are clean because that's where your vinyl is gonna seal on the edge, and you don't want it peeling back. So make sure you just take the time to get behind your little windshield. Yeah, windshield. I don't know why I forgot the name of that. Windshield little, I don't even know what I'm trying to say right now. Make sure you get behind this thing as good as you can, and then same thing on the back. As you can see, we still got some compound in there from when we buffed the car. So we're gonna get it all cleaned up, and then we can lay some vinyl. Couple minutes later, roof is all glassed out, the wrap is laying flat, and we're ready to start squeegeeing this thing. So obviously all this stuff back there is on the back windshield, that's why I don't really care about all that. But everything on the roof surface itself, as you can see, super flat. So this is an Avery wrap, and if you're just starting out with vinyl wrap, I highly suggest Avery. They're probably the easiest to work with, and it's very forgiving. So yeah, now I can break out the squeegee and we'll start squeegeeing this to the roof. Well, pretty much had the vinyl done. Was just adjusting the front right corner, or front passenger side corner. And because when we sprayed this car with paint and clear, we didn't remove the windshield. The edge of the clear was right there on the side of the windshield, and as soon as I picked up the vinyl to adjust it the last time, it pulled back our clear coat. So this is gonna have to go back to the paint shop. We gotta sand down the entire roof, respray it. I'm honestly just gonna spray it black and then clear over the black. Yeah, real bummer. I wanted to do it this way so that way whoever bought the car, if they didn't want it, they could peel the vinyl off and you know, it would be red underneath, but I mean, if this is how it was gonna come out, then why even bother? So this is all gonna get sanded down and redone. I'm just super thankful it didn't pull off any of the paint on the pillar where we had the vinyl kind of resting. It was just because we were tucking it, obviously, behind the little rain guard here. As soon as I picked it up just a little bit to adjust it to stretch the corner, it pulled it up, and then when I went to lay it back down, it just, you know, it was all rough and bubbly and yeah, screwed, and I don't want it to look like that. So yeah, this is all gonna get redone, and we're just gonna paint it black. It's now a couple days later, and I now have the transmission fluid that we can get in this car, as well as our SAE 90 LSD gear oil for the transfer case. So I have our little pump here. We're gonna go ahead and fill our transmission and transfer case with fluid. So our fill hole is actually right there, and I have a light here that I can turn on. Nice. So there's our fill hole. Our drain is that big guy down there, but we don't have to worry about that because the transmission is already empty. So let's just go ahead and we're gonna pump this full. I have the car 100% level, and once we start leaking some transmission fluid out of that hole, we know it's full. Transmission and transfer case are now both filled, and we can move on to the next thing. So I want to try to get these brakes bled. Now I am a one-man show over here, so I ordered up a little tool on Amazon. I'm gonna give it a shot. So I have no idea if this is gonna work or not. Some of you guys might be screaming at me right now, but I'm gonna try it and see what happens. So this is like a little vacuum pump. So essentially we're just gonna hook it up to the bleeder and pump it a few times, crack the bleeder open, let it suck the fluid through. Once there's no more air, we close the bleeder, move on to the next one. Seems fairly simple. We'll see if it actually handles itself that easy. Now, some of you guys may know, essentially the brake you want to start with is the one that's furthest away from either your master cylinder or your ABS pump. For me, it's going to be the passenger rear, then the driver rear, then the passenger front, and then the driver front, because our master cylinder sits over there, and we just got to be furthest away from that guy. I feel the rain crashing down all around this empty town. I'm searching for the lost and found, but you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air like a blazing flare. Just stare, 'cause the flames will burn us. I thought you were the one for me. It's the next night now, and I did manage to get the drain plug in the mail today, so I got that slapped on. So now let's go ahead and get our oil cooler on, and then maybe we can fill this thing up with oil and hope it doesn't leak. Our oil cooler is now mounted up and installed. We got our big old banjos in down there, and our brake bleeder, or a little power bleeder by Motive, just showed up. So I'm gonna try to use this to bleed the brakes. Essentially, we just fill this thing, or put a little bit of brake fluid in it, pump it up to right around 15 pounds on the gauge, and let it rip into the brake system. And then over on the first wheel we're gonna start with, I have the same setup. The vacuum pump, which I'm not gonna use as a vacuum, I'm just gonna use it as the bowl, so it'll catch the fluid as the power bleeder pushes it through. And hopefully we can get all the air bubbles out with that method. Okay, all the brakes are now bled, and we have a firm pedal, so that Motive power bleeder seemed to have worked. We'll see what happens when we start the car and, you know, actually start pumping the brakes, but as of right now, it is a nice firm pedal, and doesn't appear like we're leaking any fluid or any air out of the system. So we can go ahead and get our wheels back on, and then what I'm gonna do, before we put this power bleeder away, we'll just go ahead and bleed our clutch, and then we'll be done with that guy. With our brakes now bled, I'm gonna start moving into the fuel system, and the first thing we have to do is clean our injectors. The car came with a set of FIC 1000s. Now I'm not gonna run these the full time. We are gonna be upgrading to a set of 2000s, but to get our braking miles and, you know, start out with our base map, we can run these FIC 1000s while we wait for the 2000s to get here. So I wanna get these things cleaned out. That way when they go in there, we know we're not gonna be spraying all weird, and all of them are gonna have a proper spray out of the injector. So I do have an injector tester here connected to a 12-volt source. I have a battery here, and I've never used this before, so let's see what happens. So down here we have our 4 injectors. Have them lined up here on this paper towel, connected to our tester, which is connected to a 12-volt battery. Now what we do is we take one of these little topper guys, and we're gonna set this on top of the injector. You can see it's got a little hole there. So that goes through the top of the injector. The bottom goes on a little can of carb choke cleaner, and we're gonna spray that through the injector via this injector tester. So I have a little drain bucket there. Don't mind the messiness, but apparently you can do 2 at once. I'm gonna do 1 and see how this works. I'm just gonna take an injector, slap it on here, I think. Something like that. And then we can take our carb choke, pull the little topper off, and this is gonna sit on there like so-ish, somehow. Oh! Well, that's not exactly what we were going for. Rag me. Don't worry guys, we were just oiling up the little O-rings, no big deal. Alright, so we have this injector on. Now, I just went ahead and tested all of these, and this one wasn't working. So I kind of sprayed some carb cleaner in it, kind of hit it on the ground a few times, and now you can hear it actually pulsing. So this one is now good to go. We're still got to clean it, but at least it works. But now if we go ahead and plug all these in, you can see that one's working. That one's working. And the 4th one is working. So, now, if we put this in continuous mode, see if we can get this to work. I'm gonna hold on for dear life. Ooh, I'm gonna right in my eyeball. Not really sure what I'm doing here. All of our injectors are now cleaned and tested, and they're all working. So we can go ahead and get all those back on the rail and drop them into here. It is gonna look a little crusty with that rail for now, but don't worry, we got a radium one on the way. Now I know what you guys are thinking. You're sitting behind the screen going, Brandon, that fuel rail looks like crap in that bay. Does not belong there. Is not nice enough. Well, we do have another one on the way, but it's the next day now, and I fixed that problem because I was feeling the same way. Went ahead, pulled everything back out, sanded down our fuel rail, and painted that guy black. And I know it's temporary, but it looks a whole lot better in there now. So that's done. I also went ahead and got our catch cans hanging down there with a 10AN up to the valve cover, and then this one is just a hose that comes down and feeds this catch can. These did come with the car. They're a little crusty. Will probably get replaced, but they will work for now. This morning I really got to work on this thing because I am leaving tomorrow to go to Florida for a work trip, and I really want to get a first start. I'm actually dying to get a first start out of this thing. So all I have left to do is get the front end, the radiator, essentially, and the intercooler piping on, and we should be good to crank this thing over. This morning I got the fuel pump in a fuel hanger, and got all the wiring done. Still need some finishing touches, but I'll show you guys what I got. So like I had mentioned, we will be upgrading this in the future to 2 pumps, but right now we only have 1 relay because we have 1 pump. So this is a radium dual pump hanger. As you can see, I have 1 pump wired up, the other one is still empty. So we went ahead, wired in all of our fuel level sensor, fuel temp sensor, as well as power and ground. Now because this is a 450, we did go ahead and just run this relay with a higher gauge, or a bigger gauge, I should say, wire. That way, you know, when you're pulling more power, the stock wire is a little flimsy. So we got some big guys in here now, and then ground to the chassis, and the power is just gonna go straight to the battery. And we're on a 25 amp fuse here, so we should be good to go. The wiring with the relay is pretty easy. You got 1 wire that comes out, goes through a 20 amp fuse, which we have here, comes back out, goes to the battery, and the other line goes to the pump power on top of the hanger. And then the ground will obviously be a chassis ground. And then the blue wire I wired to the OEM trigger wire, which is gonna tell the pump to turn on or turn off. Once we get back from Florida, we'll go ahead and clean that up. But for the moment, it's honestly not too bad. Now let's go ahead and get the front crash bar on here, and then we can get our radiator, condenser, intercooler, all that in there, and get our pipes routed. We should be able to crank. All right, over the course of the last hour or so, I've pretty much got everything put together and ready for our first start. I was letting the SD card unload, and I just kind of slapped everything that was left together, and we should have everything, I think. There are a few bolts and a few clamps that we don't have on there, but I think we'll be all right. We're not gonna go rip on it. I just want to hear this thing crank up and start. Maybe we'll back it out for some pictures, but I did go ahead and put oil in it and water. I'm using water, that way if there's leaks, which there is one coolant leak out of everything, T-case, trans, oil, all looks good, but there is a coolant leak coming from somewhere in the turbo area, so I'm probably gonna have to pull the manifold in the turbo to assess that, but we can do that when we get back. I don't know if I mentioned, but I am leaving for Florida tomorrow morning and haven't even packed yet. I just wanna get a first start in this. So let's, I went ahead, unplugged the fuel pump relay. Let's let this thing crank a little bit, build some oil pressure. We'll plug that in, and hopefully she goes, baby. Alrighty. I did have to tear the radio out last night because I was trying to play music, but there's a wiring issue somewhere. It's kind of a mess if you can't tell. But let's grab our key. Alright, not really sure why the boost gauge isn't working, but we do have oil pressure, so let's see what happens here. Still reading nothing on oil pressure. There we go. All right. Looks like that's the, don't worry about that leak, but the leak, the little puddle in the back, that is the water that's leaking from the turbo. But it looks like no oil down here yet. So let's go ahead, put our fuel pump relay back in. All right, having some technical difficulties. Engine sounds super healthy. We got great oil pressure, even on crank. So I'm good with that. I don't think we're getting fuel. Actually, I know we're not getting fuel. I went ahead, pulled a spark plug, bone dry, no fuel in there. Then I went ahead, pulled the return line off the hanger, no fuel there. Cranked the car, no fuel. So I pulled the feed line off the hanger and jumped the pump to essentially run it without starting the car or whatever. And I hear the pump kick on, but there's no fuel coming out. So I'm not sure if it's a pump issue. Maybe inside the pump we have it wired backwards, but I don't think we do. I know I did red to red and black to black. If it was wired backwards, essentially it would suck fuel rather than pump fuel. But I don't know. It might just be a bad pump. I might order up a new pump and we'll see what happens. But maybe you guys know, so have a look here. Everything is wired how it should be. Here's the relay. I did just go ahead and open it up. That way we can go ahead and jump it. So I'll show you guys what I mean here as our light's about to die out on us. So take our jumper wire. Go ahead. You can hear the pump and our light just died. But there is no fuel. Well, you know what they say. When the lights go out, all the problems get solved. So I don't really know if they say that, but I just figured it out. I'm an idiot. I guess I did wire it backwards, and I put negative to the positive. So when I swap the two, all of a sudden the pumps start pumping, and it stops sucking. So now it works. The problem is still an issue. I don't know if it's with the signal wire or what, but it's not getting signal when I crank the car to turn on the pumps. But when I jump the relay and just supply constant power to the fuel pump, I can get in the car and it fires up. And unfortunately, I didn't get the first start on video, but it only ran for about 2 seconds anyway. So we'll get back in there in a second. But when I don't have the jumper in, I just connect the relay. It's not getting signal to start. So that's an issue for a later time. But let's go ahead and jump it and get this thing running again. Looks like we got some taillight wiring issues, but like everything else on this car with wiring, we'll figure it out. Oil pressure looks okay, actually really good. AFR's good. We got a Christmas tree on the dash, but everything appears to be okay. Not really sure why the ABS light's on. Not really sure why any of that's on. There is still a lot of stuff unplugged, so that could be part of the reason, but it is idling good. And it sounds good. We're smoking a little bit. Could be a coolant thing, or it's burning. Let's shut her down. And there we have it. The Evo is finally alive. A lot of bugs to work out, but finally got to hear this thing run. I don't think it's ran in over 2 years. It's been disassembled in a garage in New Jersey, and then it was disassembled in a garage in North Carolina for the past 8 months. So good to finally hear this thing go. It might even been more than 8 months now. But overall, I think 2, maybe 3 years this thing's been out. So 113,000 miles, I think I just saw, which is not too bad. I didn't know how many miles were on the car until we finally got power to it. So yeah, first start done with. We gotta figure out the taillights, figure out the fuel system, figure out cooling. We gotta get all the clamps on here. we got a lot to do, but I gotta pack and get ready for Florida. It is 8 o'clock on Saturday, and I leave at like 6:37 tomorrow, so in the morning. Not leaving me a whole lot of time. Still gotta do laundry, gotta get all my uniforms ready. You know, so I'm gonna wrap this one up right here. I hope you guys enjoyed and are stoked to see the progression of this car, just like I am. So I'll catch you in the next one, but until then, peace out. See y'all later.